Lancaster Woodturners Coffee Hour for December the 12th, 2024. I'm not sure what number it is, 231, I think, because we had to skip a number because we didn't do Thanksgiving week. My name's John Kelsey. I'll be your moderator as usual, and I'll put my email address into the recording. So those of you, all y'all who watch this on YouTube, because you have to work still, you poor guys and ladies, you can get in touch with us and get on the mailing list for the weekly invites. And once you're on it, as you probably know, you only have to be on it. Get the thing once because it's the same Zoom log on every week and has been for 4 years now. Um, I've got some club notes and news to say. Last week I skipped right over that Barry Price had retired as our club president, and I really want to acknowledge Barry's heroic and yeoman service to the club these last 3 years. He really has been a stalwart and has uh, been a real both leader and supporter in this drive to keep our club a Zoom club, a hybrid club. We have real meetings and we have Zoom meetings, and we have members who tune in from all over the place because of that. A lot of clubs have put all that down. They've decided it's too much trouble. Our club has taken the opposite tack so far and decided it's well worth the trouble, which I greatly appreciate, partly because being a geezer myself now, I'm just not making it to wintertime evening meetings. I'm in bed. I want to see the recording or I want to zoom in. And if I can zoom in from here, you can zoom in from anywhere. So I'm very, very glad the club has maintained that position. And I think it's in large part due to Barry understanding the importance of it and holding that ground. And I know that Barry's successor, John Ziegler, is holds the same position. So I think our club is going to continue to be the kind of hybrid kind of a monster that it has become. We also have so on just a moment here to just say thank you to Barry. I see him on screen, and I know yesterday was his birthday, and I just want to acknowledge Barry Price. So you want to take a bow, Barry? Wave your hand. You're on here someplace. Yeah, there you go. Thank you very much. Also, Barry led a work party last week at the space. I wasn't there, but I did hear about it from a few other people to clean up all the wood that was had been brought there. What happened is a whole lot of walnut and cherry rounds had piled up, full log pieces, and we're trying to make wood available to beginners and people who don't have ready access to turning blanks. But we also realized all of a sudden that, well, they don't also have access to the kind of bandsaw and chainsaw you need to manage those rounds up into blanks. So there was a work party there last weekend or last Saturday, and I believe they cleaned up the whole wood stash and turned as much of it as could be turned into good bowl blanks and spindle blanks as they could, and got a lot of the trash out of there. You know what happens when you start to take in wood? It's like some years ago I went to an auction at a tag sale auction in a building that had been a woodworking shop for about 80 years. And it was just full, every rafter, there was wood everywhere. And when you looked at it, you realized it was the worst board of every lot they'd ever bought. If they needed 120 board feet, they'd buy 130 and they'd use the good wood, and the worst board would go up in the rafters for later. Well, that's kind of what happens at the club wood stash as well. People buy the good stuff, and the stuff that nobody wants stays there. And before long, all you got is the stuff that nobody wants. it, it has to be thinned out. This Saturday morning is open shop, Lancaster Club again. Anybody in the area is welcome to come between 9 and noon. Bring your tools, bring your projects, bring your problems, bring your coffee cup. We usually have anywhere between 15 and 20 people there, and we've got 7 lathes now. Is that right? Is there 7 lathes in there? There's a lot of lathes. And I also believe a tool committee is forming to make sure that each of those lathes actually has the chucks and the tools and the whatnots that it needs to be a functioning workstation. So the club is really coming along and really advanced a long way in being a service place for the members. I don't see any real clamor for more than one open shop a month that I haven't heard anyway, but I'm pretty sure if there was one, we would respond to that as well. So that gives us a all Zoom meeting, that's this one, a hybrid meeting, that's the monthly club meeting, and a no Zoom meeting, that's the monthly open shop. So I think that's kind of a nice balanced menu for club members. Um, Anybody else with announcements?
Hey, John, can I just say
Yeah,
one thing?
please.
Angelo at Saturday's wood prep, say Angelo is going to be offering, I'm not sure what his MO is here, but he wants to use some other Saturday on a monthly basis or what have you to conduct lessons for people at at Kaufman. So he will entertain, I think, one person per lathe, up to 7 people, I guess. So we'll find out more, I guess, this weekend and at the next meeting what Angelo's plans are. But Angelo, as everybody knows, is an expert turner and has helped me tremendously as well as people in open shop. So that's another benefit to this group.
Oh, I'm really glad to hear that. I might even volunteer to help in my limited way if he needs help with that. But Angelo, and I've learned a lot from Angelo. So he's a terrific teacher and an enormously clever and skillful turner. Angelo was at one time AAW board president back in 2006, 7, and 8, roughly. So he goes a long way back in this bracket, and he's also been a professional woodturner, specializing in illusions for magicians. Amazing guy. How about Harrisburg, Susquehanna? Where are you guys coming with the farm show planning and stuff like that?
Well, I want to send an email to Tom Wenzel and have him forward it to the LAW uh, club. And we have a sign up sheet. It's on Google Drive. You can open it up and add your name to the schedule. We need to have that done pretty soon because we're going to have parking passes printed up for all of the people that are demonstrating and helping out with the Department of Agriculture hardwood exhibit. The exhibit space that they're going to have is a little bit smaller than it was last year, but it's still going to be in about the same spot. So it's inside the main exhibition hall, about 100 yards from the butter sculpture.
So how much time when somebody comes to sign up to demonstrate, what's their shift look like? What do they have to plan to do?
From about 9 o'clock till 2:30, and from 2:30 till 8:30.
So it's like two shifts.
Yes, yes. There's two shifts. We like to have two people on each shift, one to talk to the person, to the people that are at the exhibit, and one to do the turning. Uh, we make just small items because we can't really do a lot of sanding. So we make tops for the kids. We make little mushrooms, pine cones, Christmas trees, and that sort of thing. And we normally give them away. And I'm bringing about 50 pen kits. I've already got the blanks prepped, and I'll be turning those at the farm show where I'm there. You
All
don't
right.
have to turn anything. All you have to do is talk. You can either talk to the people, or you can turn, or both, or you can just decide with your partner in crime which you want to do and when you want to trade off. So it's a lot of fun. We get to talk to a lot of people, and we have a great time.
All
We will
right.
provide lathes. There will be a lathe there. We don't have dust collection because they really frown on us doing any sanding there because of the dust that we'd create. Uh, we normally have a shop vac to clean up, and it's a lot of fun.
All right. I encourage anybody who has the stamina and the interest to do it to take up that invitation. I see a text from Max Kackstatter wondering what is the format of our open shop. It really doesn't have a format. It's show up and talk to people. It usually works out pretty well. I show up. I usually bring whatever I'm working on, and there's almost somebody who wants to talk about skew chisels or uh, small boxes, things I know a bit about, and I just try and get in and help them. Uh, it's extremely informal, which is what makes it fun, and it often concludes with for those who wish a bacon lunch at Gracie's Restaurant on West Main in Leola. Lancaster is one of the places in the world where they make bacon, and Gracie's on West Main is a restaurant that specializes in. You can get a flight of 7 kinds of bacon there. It's amazing. Anybody else with announcements? Any other area clubs?
Hey, this is Ken from Nittany Valley Woodturners.
I can.
Yeah, we had a successful winter market. Amazingly, only 3 people in the club decided to get into the winter market. We had sales, and sales were okay. They weren't great, but they were okay. We tried a different format this year. We worked along with the makerspace, and we uh, they handled everything basically. They handled all the that was my cat. They handled the sales. They restocked if you wanted to. You didn't really have to be at your booth, which works out real nice. But they get they get 10%, which I didn't think was too bad of the sales.
That's
Uh,
pretty
but
generous.
we decided though that next year we're going to get our regular tent outside. That's the problem. It's outside. We're going to get a tent outside, and we're going to do sales individually rather than do it that way. We had much better success with sales that way. And then we had our successful Christmas party in the early December here. The food was spectacular. I made kibasi and sauerkraut, which was perfect. And uh, January, we're going to have nominations for new presidents. I'm going to be stepping down as the president, and we're going to get some new blood in there. And February will be elections.
All right. Anybody else? Area clubs? All right. Since I'm holding the floor, I'm going to continue to hold it for just a minute here. As you know, I've been making these magnet boxes, in which I've managed to get the magnets to disappear from the outside perimeter by turning a sleeve that fits over the regular magnet box. And I think it makes a rather nice, it feels to me like this is a fully resolved design. And I know I'm going to make a bunch more. I've got some gifts to do, and they're fairly tedious to make, but if you get the steps in order, it works out all right. But one of the things I'm wrestling with right now is how do I make this sleeve, this ring? Here's a blank that I turned this sleeve off of last night in front of my shirt. You can see it. So I'm chucked at this end, and I'm parting in from this end to turn this blank, and I've subsequently made a tenon on this end as well. I wanted to part in with a real narrow parting in there so I could maybe use this part of the blank for the inside of the box, but I cannot do that. Uh, it just doesn't work. Here's what I've been using for parting tools. Well, a couple of things here I wanted to show and talk about. I found that this little parting tool works about the best. It's 1/8 of an inch wide, and I make a groove in a slot into the end that's about a half again wider than this is, because otherwise it catches right there, and when it catches right there, it'll yank the workpiece right out of the chuck. So, and I've experimented with a variety of different shapes. I've bought some more tool steel, and this is one that I've been reshaping and reshaping. It's quite thin, and I've made all of the edges here safe. There are no sharp corners on this one, so the only cutting point is here. There's no sharp place. This blade is too long, but it's going to get shorter as I continue to experiment with the shapes. And I also adopted the method that John Wilson showed us a couple of weeks ago of getting these things into their handles. I had been gluing up 3-part handles, uh, such as this one, and I'll talk some more about this one in a minute, in which there's an outer 3 pieces with the blade in the middle. So I'm milling wood to the thickness of the blade and making a square opening for it and then gluing it in. In this one, I just bored a hole in the end that the blade would fit into, and then made a dowel that would fit the hole, and then bandsawed the blade width out of the dowel, and so I've got 2 half dowels or 2 portions of dowel in here against the blade, holding it in place. That worked really well. That was quick and easy, a good technique. So thanks a lot, John Wilson, for that. That's what I'm going to do from now on. Uh, so what I'm interested, and then the other thing I wanted to say before I ask my question, this is a scraper that I use a fair amount in making little boxes. And the reason it's a negative rake scraper, it's for finishing the inside, like in here, finishing in here and in here after I have glued the magnets in. What I'm wanting to do is clean this up without affecting this diameter at all. So I have to get right to the corner down in there. I have to get right down in that corner, but I can't cut anything away from this. So I make a negative rake scraper that has a safe edge here. It's relieved on both sides, but this is not sharp. This is just rounded over. So it'll cut right up to that corner, but it won't cut on this side. There's no sharp corner in the way in this in the project I'm making to 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 mess up the workpiece. So it's just a scraper here, and it's almost straight, but not quite. There's a little tiny dome in it. And this allows me to just take those last few shavings off the surface of the wood to get any glue and any little bits of torn grain or any what else. And I'm using the Allen Lacer method here. I learned at the Mid-Atlantic. I stone it off flat. I grind the burr, and then I stone it off flat, and then I raise the burr. So I can get a minutely tiny little burr here that does a really good job of creating a final finish. In theory, you wouldn't have to sand it at all, but I usually do. But I usually start around 180 and go very quickly to 320, and I'm done. So that has so it's. I guess I want to sing the praises of buying these bars of tool steel. I buy them off Amazon. They usually come 3 or 4 at a time. They come in millimeter sizes. They're all 200 millimeters long, which is about 8 inches. Various thicknesses. Like this is, I don't know, 8 millimeters thick and 16 wide. And this one is 1.5 millimeters thick. And I don't know, it doesn't say how wide. Yeah, it does. It's 2 millimeters thick by 8 millimeters wide. And that's just anywhere in between. You can get a piece of this high-speed steel. You can get actually 3 of them for about $12 most of the time. And I haven't had any bad experiences with the steel being bad. It's all worked out really well. So I want to just, okay, with that as an intro, throw it out there for commentary on if you were trying to part into end grain like this so you could free a ring, what would you use?
Hey,
What shape
John.
would it be?
Hey, John, when we make the Chinese nested spheres, the tools that I got from Jean-Claude Charpignan, he had them tapered on the sides so that the cutting top was the widest and the bottom was narrowest. And it was flat on top instead of at a diamond.
I tried to grind that shape in and do it flat on top. That's like the predecessor to this tool was exactly that way. And I have another one that I've done. I can't do that grinding accurately enough.
I may have a piece of steel. How deep are you going to go into those, John?
Under an inch most.
I may have a piece of steel. I'll grind it for you and send it to you and let you try it.
That would be wonderful. I would like to have I guess what I really need to do is jig up so that I can grind the profile of a regular parting tool, that's a little diamond shape. I think that's actually the best shape. But I can't grind that accurately by hand. I'm going to have to jig up for it, and I just haven't done that. So yeah,
John, if you really wanted to spend the money, one of our former members, he lives about 10 minutes from me, was doing ring bowls in the Michael Mode fashion, with the exotic glue ups and that. So he bought the one-way drilling adapter, and he ground a machinist parting tool, and he did taper it, but he had that set up so he could change the angles. So in this case, you would just go in at 90 degrees, but it absolutely holds the tool firmly. I have a reprint on that I'll send it to you.
I would appreciate that.
Yeah, just to see it, that would be a fair amount of investment. But I was just thinking if you had a piece of hardwood with a slot in it that you could put in your tool post, you could mount the parting tool in that at the proper angle and just use that as a guide. So on those thin widths, it's not going to tip,
Yeah. And I also, I'm after, just building my skills. So I'm fine with maintaining parallelism with the latheways with this by being careful and eyeballing where I am. It's at the grinder that I think I need to make a jig like you're talking about. I got
Yeah.
a hardwood block that would let me make this diamond shaped in section.
The CBN wheel with the flat side, which I don't have and not going to buy, but that possibly would be the way to grind that taper.
I agree. I have that. I just don't. Yeah, yeah. I think that's right.
John, if you draw that thing, if you draw a picture of what you're trying to do, anything above the center on that tool going straight up is going into the radius. Okay?
Yeah,
You cannot have any tool above the center of that. I found, I do
yeah,
these circles, okay? That thing, the top of the tool, I use a square tool, first off. The top of the tool, the left side is radius, so the radius you have in whatever you're trying to push it into.
yeah. That makes sense.
Okay, because if you have a straight going up, you're going into the wood.
Yep.
So I use a square piece, like if you want to go in an eighth, I mean, if you want to go in an inch, you probably have to use a 3/16 square or something. I use about an 1/8 inch square, okay? But I'm only going in 3/8 of an inch maybe. Got an 1/8 inch square, radius on the left side, and
Ah,
sharpened on the other side, sharpened on the end. If it's side grain, you use a burr. If it's end grain, you sharpen it and take the burr off. That presses. I learned the hard way.
that sounds right. I've been thinking and making drawings like that. I just haven't managed
Yes,
to achieve it.
once you draw it, you'll see. Also, on the inside of the cut, on the right-hand side, it's going away, so you don't have to worry about that. It can go square down.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
And when I make, what I'm doing right now is making this ring a little bit over thick, and then I've made a wooden chuck. I can hold the ring like this, and I can clean the inside up in the usual manner, and get
yeah.
it the parallel using calipers to test the fit. Both
Well,
calipers.
you could turn it inside, but you still can't use a parting tool to do that. You have to use
No,
a tool to do that, yeah.
no, I
A
use
parting tool will not turn an inside ring.
no, I use a side
Yeah.
scraper in here.
That's right.
And it's yeah, very, very gingerly and a little bit at a time. And if you get it right, you get a perfect thickness, so it's uniform. And then I can make it. And my next step in this is to turn a collar here that this just exactly fits over, and that'll
Yeah.
be the top of the box, and then part it off and make the top and the bottom in the usual way.
If I was going in an inch, I would probably make two tools. I'd make one to just hog it out, and then the other one to clean up the left-hand side of the cut.
Yeah, I think maybe you're right. I think maybe you're right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very helpful discussion.
Hey,
Anybody
Jim,
else?
when you do that, do you put a negative rake on that or a positive rake on that top of that tool cutter? Or is it just flat?
It's, like I said, if it's side grain, I use a negative rake with a burr. If it's end grain, I use a straight scraper, ground sharp, and then take the burr off, a dead square end. I got that off of Tormac. Did anybody ever read the directions?
Yeah, I do.
In there, it tells you to use a burr on side grain, take the burr off on end grain. And when you take the burr off, you're as much burnishing, I think, as you are cutting. It's a pressing action more as much as cutting, and it makes a polished edge.
In that vein, somewhere I was reading Darlow on some of these things, looking for answers, and Darlow makes the point that when you're parting, you're not only following the wood in, you also need to have some forward pressure on the end of the handle in order to maintain cutting angle right where it's properly cutting with a parting tool. And I started to realize that I was just jamming the tool in and lowering it, or following in the shape, the reduced diameter, and I was not driving in from the end, so I was losing my optimum angle out here.
That's on a spindle.
Yeah,
That's on a spindle, yeah. A spindle, you ride it just like you ride the bevel of anything.
Yeah. Well, somehow I didn't know that.
It's a radius, yeah.
I didn't know that till a couple weeks ago. There you go.
Yeah, don't feel bad. I just learned that a year ago.
Okay.
I know all this stuff, I just don't do it.
Well,
I'm
thank you all
wondering, I'm wondering if having a positive rake on the end of that would shear those fibers on the end grain better.
I've tried it. It's grabby.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay.
Doesn't.
Okay.
Grabby's the issue. Yeah. And grabby will yank the blank right out of the chuck. Enough of this. Unless anybody's got anything else fabulous to say, I'm going to move along.
John, I have a question. On the high-speed steel that you're getting off the internet, do you have any idea what the hardness is or how it compares to like an N2 steel?
I have no idea. Not a clue. I know that it doesn't hold an edge as well as the lovely little scrapers you can buy from D-Way, but those are pushing $100 each, and this I can get 4 for $12. So, I'm all right with it.
Right. Okay.
I think
Thank you.
D-Way does some rather special exotic heat treating to maintain because their steel is just magnificent.
Hey, John, maybe this is an appropriate question now. Do CBN wheels ever wear out?
Yes.
How do you know that for sure? I guess it doesn't sharpen your tool, but
Right.
mine looks like it's getting worn. I'm going, I haven't ground that much with it. So
They do wear out, and also it's possible that the CBN coating kind of peels off. We had a guy in the club bring one of those along about a year ago. Jack Gardner had one where it just peeled off it like it was paint.
I think that there's a lot of difference in that steel too that I've just accidentally run into. Sometimes that carbide stuff, it's not the same quality as the stuff that we're seeing from a more reputable supplier.
That's probably true as well. I'd probably you should buy your high-speed steel from McMaster Carr or somebody rather than off from Amazon.
They need to be clean too, don't they?
the CBN?
Yeah,
I have one of those cleaners from which one of the guys we all buy from him. One of the sanding guys sells a cleaner. It's like a tube, and you put it on the wheel. Yeah, I don't know. Have CBNs been around long enough that they can be rated as to who makes the best ones? There's a guy on the web, and it's probably the same guy, and I can't think of his name right now, who sells CBNs.
Woodturners Wonders.
Is that it? Yeah, I think you're right, John. I think you're right.
Yeah, I think there is a difference in quality. I know that some of them have a steel body and some have an aluminum body, but they're pretty good. I mean, the ones I've had for quite a few years, and they are not dull, and they are not degraded. They will get clogged if you grind old style steel, older tool steel. Anybody else? All right. I'm going to go to the hands, whatever hands we have. I see Dawn, and we left Dawn hanging last week, so we're going to go to you, Dawn. What are you going to show us today?
Right. Hello, everybody. I just thought I'd show you what I've been doing over the last 2 weeks. It's just going to share a screen. You see that okay?
Yes.
Yep. Well, this is 3 lamps that somebody wanted some bases for. So I made the bases up, and just to show you what they're like. And it's a chap that's been coming to me for about 4 or 5 years. And what he does with all the stuff he keeps making, I don't know, but it's just unbelievable what his house must look like. But it's just 3 bases. They are set back into them, but he didn't want the cable to come down through the base. He wanted it just to be left, as you can just see it here on the bottom right. Can I make that bigger? Yeah. On the bottom right, you can see the cable coming out here, and the same on this side. So he didn't want to change that at all. So then the next time, that was those, and then I went on to this, which is a new base for a salmon trophy that's fished for each year. The trophy that was made before was so small they could only get 6 years on it, so they wanted it enlarged, and because it was oval and they wanted it round, I had to discard their old one, take the salmon off, and rebuild a brand new plinth in Iroko.
How big a piece is that?
It's across the base here is 7.5 inches. It's 2 inches tall there, and it's 2 inches up here. So it's just 4 inches tall, starting at around 7.5 inches.
So that gets a brass plaque around it with the guy's name on it or something?
Right. The reason I don't put a flange here or here is so that they can put a silver band
Oh, okay.
around both
Oh,
pieces. I do make this type of trophy where there's a silver band to go on, but I put a recess and I recess it in to the timber, and then where these two are joined, because this is 2 pieces of timber joined together, where that is normally joined, I put a bolt up through the bottom to the top one, and they can undo the bolt, take the top part of the plinth off, remove the silver band for engraving, and put it back on and bring it back down again so that the band cannot be moved. This one, they didn't want that. They wanted it so they could move the bands off without parting the trophy, because unfortunately that looks like aluminium or pewter. It is actually a coated resin.
Huh.
The trophy, that's a coated resin. So I had to be very careful in drilling a hole through the bottom. I did put a bolt in it because the weight, and I realized that some people would just pick up the trophy by the fish, and that could make it a bit tenable. So I put a bolt up through and screwed and glued it into the base of the salmon and bolted it to the bottom so that you've got extra strength if somebody stupid did want to pick up the trophy.
What's your standard finish?
That is my one where I use a sander sealer, and then I go through my 4 buffing wheel procedure, which is the brown paste, then the white diamond, Kanubi and beeswax, and then a dry mop to buff it all up at the end. And that is the same on, that's the same on these. That's the same finish on those as well.
Hold up here a second now. That lamp, where did that, is that something he's sourced, or is that a used one he found in the marketplace, or what?
Yeah, he picks them up from the local antique shops and brings them along and wants bases put on.
That's a lovely little lamp, but it would be hard, would like to find some of those.
Yeah, it's a really old one, but he's bought me clocks off of ships, barometers off of ships, of all types of things. I don't know why he does it, but he does, and why he loves them. But it keeps me busy. So then the next thing I did, I had a friend of mine come along who is renovating a 150-year-old cottage. and he is extending the loft space and wanted some spindles. He spent 2 months going around different spindle making manufacturers, and not one of them would make the spindles because the pattern is no longer in anybody's mind. So first of all, I had to make some newel posts for him, two types, and wide too, I've no idea, but that's what he wanted. So I've made those.
Wait a minute.
Then I made the spindles.
How did you
the
mortise those?
spindles? That one on the left, as you can see, is painted white. That was the original. And he wanted it increased at this particular type by just 10 millimeters. So what we did, we increased from that bead to that bead by the 10 millimeters. So that these matched that and those matched up there. And they're 800 mil long. And each one was hand turned.
Nicely done. Now back to that previous slide, you have a mortise in those things, yeah?
Pardon?
There was a mortise in the samples that
Yes.
yeah, those. How did you make that mortise? And when?
I didn't. They came to me like that, and I had to get it right in that specific position when I came to turn the pummels.
Well, okay, in general, if you were turning work like that, would you make the mortise in the square blank or would you make it after you turned?
I wouldn't make the mortise. I would make the builders or the carpenters do that because I don't have a machine that would be capable of doing that other than a router.
So you
And I
would have it,
like to
they would
guarantee
do it, they would do it after turning, not before.
after turning, yes. But this particular case, he did it first. I brought him along and I said, well, you made it a bit awkward, but I will do my utmost to make them right.
Yeah, I've done that both ways. If I make the mortise in the square workpiece, I can get a much more accurate and clean mortise, but then it's a problem keeping it in the right place. On the other hand, if I make turn first and then try and make and then put the mortise in, it's hard. It's difficult often to hold the workpiece. It's you gotta. It's a juggle.
Yeah.
Either way, there's a juggle.
It's a catch-22, John.
Yeah, zugzwang.
Yeah, it's a catch-22. So, but that's what I've been up to over the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Hey,
doing
Dawn, I have a question. Did you have to use a steady rest whenever you were making these?
No,
You didn't. Okay.
no.
So what did you
And
say the overall length was of that?
sorry, I missed that.
What did you say the overall length was of those?
800 mil.
Okay.
What I do, I only used 2 tools. I used 3 tools because first of all, I used my skew to put the pummel on. I used a roughing gouge to turn between the 2 pummels to the diameter. And then I used a 3/8 spindle gouge to do all the rest, except for this piece here when I used the roughing gouge to take it down because of the length of the piece that was wanted. But
And how are you laying that out?
Well, I made a platform of 2 uprights and I screwed that between the 2 uprights, bolted that close as I could to my lathe's bed, in line with the piece that was in the lathe between the centers, and I made a idiot stick, marked them up, and then used the pattern of this as I went along to give me the pattern.
So in other words, you're marking what are you marking with your idiot stick? The major diameters or the minor diameters, the parting cuts? What are you marking?
The either side of the beads, so that I knew where the beads were.
Both sides of the beads.
Both sides of the beads, and then this one side of the pummel piece, and then the shape piece here, the base of it, and the top of where the center was, and the same on the bottom.
Well, I can see in this something I've often noticed in this kind of work. You can vary, the diameter can vary a lot, and so can the actual minutiae of the shapes as long as the elevations don't change.
Yes,
As long as the beads are all the same height on all the pieces, it doesn't matter if the diameters are not all the same. It'll look the same.
that's right. As long as they're in line,
Yeah.
because there is a couple in there. If you look very closely, you'll notice there is a slight error. And the reason for that is, if you look on the wood, you'll notice there are lots of knots in this wood.
Yep.
And I thought this was very good timber when it was brought to me, even with the knots, but it was splintering like hell. And some places where the knots were, I had to go a little deeper to just clean up that knot. And then a couple of places they had to be filled because it just jumped and dug in like nobody's business. But the guy came and collected them. He paid me what I wanted, and he went away happy.
And those are pine, are they?
They are pine, yes.
Do you know what kind of pine or where it's from?
No idea. He all I know is that the 16 pieces that he bought cost him 90 quid.
Wow.
Which is ridiculous, really. But he paid for it. It wasn't mine, so I had to be very careful that I didn't destroy any.
Yeah.
But he did give me one extra if I needed it.
You had one extra. Did you use that up? I mean, did you consume
No,
one?
he took it away as a square section piece of wood.
All right. Questions for Don? Comments for Don?
Don, I got a question. Why do you put sanding sealer on before you start the Beal buffing? The reason I asked is I found I had turned a cherry vase and I found it laying around and I went to and Beal polished it. And I don't think I had anything on, and boy, I was just totally amazed at how well it shined up, you know. So why do you put a sanding sealer on first?
Because I always have done.
Oh, okay.
Right, there you go.
Because originally I used to just put sander sealer on and wipe a wax stick over it.
Okay.
I found that doing that, you didn't really, especially for a trophy base, it was a little bit tacky. So because these are trophy bases, I tend to make certain that I've taken off that stickiness, if you like. So I make certain that they're sealed first to take the wax. And then when I buff it, it just cleans off, doesn't clean it off, but it removes the waxiness of that wax, of the canubi and the beeswax.
And the sanding sealer is hard enough to not be a problem.
Yeah, I push it on with a brush and wipe it off immediately, any surplus with paper toweling. So and then before I start, I make certain, because that's done on the lathe, it comes off the lathe for the buffing, of course, and by then it's hardened up quite nicely.
Yeah. Anybody else on this? Questions for Don? Thank you very much, Don.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're ingenious as usual. Sherry, you're on.
I don't have anything to show, just have a question. Wondering if we can go back to a short discussion on the CBN wheels. Wondering specifically, I guess, how do you know when one is worn out and it's ready to change? And again, I don't quite understand what you guys use to clean them, or how often you do that. How do you know when it's time to do that? Those sorts of things.
Somebody? I know that when they stop cutting, then they're they're worn out, and you'll see more. The grit will wear off the substrate. You'll be able to see that it isn't like it was. It'll have bare patches. Now, what the cleaner is, I don't use it. I don't know, because I don't grind anything but high-speed steel.
I think I got it from Woodworking Wonders, the guy that sells a lot of CBNs. Do I have the right guy? I think John suggests that might be who I was talking about. Go there.
Ken Rissa.
Ken.
Ken Rissa.
Yes, Ken's
Yeah.
the guy I'm trying to think
What
of.
what does the cleaning thing look like?
It's like a tube of underarm deodorant, a round one, and you
All
just
right.
push the stuff out the end and hold it up to the wheel. Don't
Yeah,
do it on the
it's called
underarm.
Slick Stick.
Yes,
Lick
exactly.
stick. All right, good.
You can't get it in Canada.
Oh, really?
You can get it from
I-
Woodturners Wood, so he'll ship to you perfectly happily.
Yeah, Ken has sold Woodturners Wonders, but they still sell the products. But he had a whole series of really good videos. So if you would go to Woodturners Wonders and look at their videos off of that site, I think most of the questions would be answered. I think for most of us, I haven't worn out a CBN wheel, and I've worn down the old friable wheels. But I have not had to replace a CBN wheel, and they don't feel very gritty at all, and yet they cut just fine because you're really not taking off much metal when you use them. It's just sharpening that blade. It's almost honing that blade, that edge, rather than grinding it. So you don't really lose the grit fast. They last a long time, Sherry, is what I'm saying.
I'm with Dennis. I think it would last you a lifetime. I found that I use way more tool grinding than I do using them to cut wood. And I'll tell you, I think that thing would last you 2 lifetimes.
You have to abuse them pretty hard to wear them out.
Yeah.
I think you have to be cautious on where you buy them. If you buy a cheap one, you'll have problems. I bought mine from Cutter Master probably 12, 13 years ago, and I'm still using it. It still sharpens like a dream, and I've ground down 2 or 3 tools where the tools are no longer usable, and that wheel is still like brand new. So, but Cutter Master's not cheap. They're you get what you pay for. If you buy a real cheap CBN wheel, chances are it may be not as good as some of the more expensive ones. So reputable buyers for sure. And that cleaning solution, I think, is snake oil. It's CBN, is taken high-speed steel. I've never had mine fog up. I don't sharpen carbon steel on it, but I'll use it for high-speed steel only.
Okay, that's what I've been doing as well. Yes.
Yeah.
Trend sells some cleaners for diamond holes, and if you look at it, it's not a hell of a lot different than Windex.
John Wilson,
Sherry,
John Wilson has a bunch of. Wilson, you want to talk to us? You've been posting.
Sherry, I've used the CBM wheel from the Wonders, and they work great, but I had some student bring in some carbon steel, and they really plugged up the grit on the stone. So I went looking for information. They were saying to use Varsol and a wire brush, and I was sort of skeptical about that. And then one come up with, take a drill bit, put it in the vice grips, and grind it aggressively till its drill bit turns red hot, and that will melt out any of the sticky mild steel that's stuck in between the grits. Now the slip stick, I've tried it and I've read the instructions 4 times, and I was a little too aggressive. I put too much on. They say in the instructions and everything, very, very little, capitalizing the very little. And I found that makes a difference. But just grinding tool steel on the CBM wheel, they should last forever. Now the grit that comes off it, I put a little magnet on the bar that holds the tool to catch any of the metallic dust in the air, and it all sticks on that little magnet, and I just wipe it off periodically so I don't have to breathe it.
I actually collected on magnets, and I have a bowl about this big that is filled up with very expensive grit. Expensive steel.
Do I understand correctly then, if I only use a sharpened high-speed steel on my CBN, I do not need to clean it?
Correct.
Okay, that's what I've been doing, but I thought cleaning, I've never cleaned it, so now I understand. Okay, thank you.
Mild steel is the problem. That's what happens.
Okay.
grind an old style tool and it's going to gum up probably.
Okay,
Uh,
thanks.
There's one other little tidbit here is when you're using your tool on, say, pine or some of the woods, sap will stick on the underside of the cutting edge. And so when you go up to the CBM window to sharpen it, it will dirty the CBM wheel. So I always wipe it off just before I start to grind so that I'm not taking any contamination to the stone.
good
Okay.
point.
Great, thank you.
All right. Bowman.
Hey, I'm gonna see if I can do this with it. I've been, for the fun of it, turning wine stoppers. That's my deal this season. I don't turn any other Christmas things. But this time I've been burying all kinds of things. This one I have a chain actually hanging inside the epoxy. I did that because the guy that was wanting me to turn some for the guy I mentioned earlier before the meeting, the customer salesman at a big wine store asked me to make him a bunch of them. And he said he liked retro stuff. So I started putting things in the epoxy. I got about 6 other things with things like padlocks and that kind of stuff buried in it. And then I went to what we call the Restore here in Pennsylvania, or in Maryland we have one, but up in Pennsylvania. And I found a short stubby screwdriver. So I buried it in walnut, turned a little on, and that became a screwdriver wine stopper. Then I scrounged through my hardware box and found a bunch of these, I guess they're ceramic or whatever, door pulls or drawer pulls. Put that one on a walnut, on a little walnut thing. The reason I had to do that way was I had to have a place for the screw to hold that on and still have room to put the threading in thing in the bottom. I guess you guys have worked with them, know how that works. I also discovered recently, and I'm using now blue, I didn't on this one yet, but when the customer buys them, I put a drop of blue Loctite. Blue Loctite on there will then make it not screw off when you do it. Don't use the red because you'll never get it off. The blue, if you get aggressive with you can get it off in case you need to. One of the other things is I had a bunch of, and I don't know if you guys, particularly in Canada, have these. These are old metal doorknobs. My dear wife says, Jim, that's not going to work on a wine bottle. It's going to tip it over. But these are hollow inside. Believe it or not, they're not solid brass or anything. But I had fun with them because I just bought a tap, 3816 tap, and the size of the square thing that goes in is small enough that I drill it a little bit and then I do the tap and then this screws right into it. No epoxy involved. And then I got really crazy, and that's where I spend my money. I went and started buying gear shift knobs. And this is a carbon fiber one. I have an 8-ball from they're all downstairs. I have an 8-ball from a pool. I got a couple different knobs. I got one with all solid aluminum with a gear shift pattern on the top. Heavy as all get, but on Amazon, you can buy them fairly cheap. And ironically, again, now this one I had to, ironically, again, 38,
Yeah.
16 are a pretty common,
How would you buy a gear shift knob? Paid $20 for.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say this one cost me 15. It was the most expensive one I bought. And I decided, what the heck. And then he didn't want any of those. So now I got to figure out what to do with them. But ironically, a number of the insert adapters which you get with them, like if you buy them at AutoZone or a place like that, will actually thread directly on a 3/8 thread, which is what most of the pointed things are. One other quick thing, if you buy the Niles or even PSI, on PSI you got to be aware that they often have ones that are just coated. And in no time flat, that coating the acid will work it off and you'll have an ugly looking one. This I bought on Amazon. They are claimed to be stainless steel, and that's the secret. And they don't cost $8 a piece like Niles do, or 10 or 12. So I've been using these. Don't know if it's good or bad, but as long as it's stainless steel, even if it's cheap Chinese stainless steel, it's probably better than a coated one.
Jim, they look like weapons.
Hey, they do kind of, don't they? This one particularly. This one you take on a street fight, you carry in your pocket. So
I buy the Niles with the flat bottom so that it can be displayed on the shelf or somewhere else when it's not being used. I give almost all of them away, and people seem pleased with them.
Yeah, no, I agree. The Niles with those flat bottoms, that's a great idea. They were just expensive, but the ones I give away for gift, this guy said, look, I don't want to spend a lot of money. I just want to give them as a token to my customers at the wine store. And he said, don't buy the expensive stuff. But the Niles is what I would use. I like that idea. It's great. So, yeah.
Well, I see in the comments, Hankinson, I think, is speaking for many of us and wondering, why would you ever put a stopper in a bottle of wine? What's the point?
Hey, look, I want to give Christmas gifts away, and this is just one to have fun with. So
that's coffee hour for December the 12th. We'll see you all next week.
Wood shop. Thank God for wood.